News now, and the United States has been marking Veterans Day. Thousands participated in parades and events across the nation to commemorate the holiday, but despite celebrations and words of honour given on this day, some veterans do still feel very alone the rest of the year.
I'll see things that most people back here will not see. I'll see things that people back home won't have to deal with, and yes, I know this.
When there are flashbacks or nightmares, there really isn't any control over it. You try to, but there really isn't. It's a complete loss of control.
Well, Gordon Duff, a Marine combat veteran of the Vietnam War, told us more support does need to be given to those who once fought for their country.
America fighting genuinely unjust wars and justifying those wars through temporary glorification of the troops, like today, 1 day a year. The rest of the year, American military veterans are more than ignored. 300 of them sit on death row in the U.S. Our prisons are filled with veterans. Our mental hospitals are filled with veterans. Our homeless shelters are filled with veterans. Veterans are far from honored in the United States, except for 1 day a year.
You're watching RT International. We're going to take a quick break now, but when we come back, we'll have a look at the escalating violence in Turkey.
Cicero once said, "The life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living." If he were alive today, he might say, "The memory of the living is placed in the life of the dead." So many small memories of what life our economies once had in the dead industries, the zombie banks, the broken markets, which stalk us today.
When the debt, for example, was at a level compared to the economy, to the GDP, that it could not allow Greece to be in the Eurozone, they had to essentially hide the debt. And not only Greece. There were a number of countries that didn't comply, that didn't follow the rules. And they used all kinds of techniques that European institutions accepted. And it was American institutions that came in and provided currency swaps and other things. And everybody pretended that the debt was much lower than it actually was.
Welcome back. You're with RT. Now 7 people, including 2 civilians, have been killed in the Turkish town of Silvan, which has been under curfew for 9 days. The town in the country's southeast has been the flashpoint of Kurdish resistance. Government forces there are now fighting militants from the banned Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as the PKK. These are the scenes there at the moment: abandoned streets, bullet-riddled buildings and armoured vehicles on patrol. It is the latest of 6 curfews that have been imposed in Silvan since the PKK declared self-rule in the town. Locals say they are suffering from a lack of food and water.
We are worried for their lives. Their basic needs are not being met. No electricity, no water. Unfortunately, we have no idea about their standard of life. If you use tanks in areas where civilians live, it means simply that you have declared war against those civilians, those people.
A 2-year ceasefire between Turkey and the PKK broke down in July. Middle East political risk analyst Şuan Zulal thinks the tensions are only going to get worse.
I can't see a way forward until there's some sort of revival of the peace process. But given the way the politics has been stoked and the division within Turkey has been stoked in the last few months, I don't see the violence sort of decreasing. I only can see the violence increasing. You look at the pictures from the town of Silvan now, you just see as if you're looking at pictures from a town in Aleppo or any other war-torn or Kobani or city in Syria.
Well, Kurdish fighters are one of the few forces battling Islamic State on the ground in Iraq and also Syria. At the moment, they are launching an offensive to retake the town of Sinjar in northern Iraq from the terrorists. These are some of the latest pictures from the area. The smoke is believed to be the aftermath of a US-led airstrike. It's believed more than 7,000 Kurdish fighters are now closing in on the town. Sinjar was previously liberated by the Kurds in January, but only for a short period of time. Back then, an RT crew travelled to the devastated region for an insight into the scars the war had left behind.
Between August and December last year, the area around the Sinjar mountain in northern Iraq was swarming with Islamic State jihadists, making it largely inaccessible to anyone else. So shortly after Kurdish forces had liberated it, we seized the chance to travel there and were met by a scene of desolation. Houses razed to the ground and deserted villages. The people who lived here had either been murdered or had run for their lives.
Now, if we haven't got enough TV channels already, then prepare for some more. That after an Ariane rocket packed with TV and communication satellites blasted off into space. You can watch the launch at rt.com, also there. And also roaring towards space, China has been testing a hypersonic weapon aimed at taking down enemy satellites in the Earth's orbit. You can read about that too at rt.com. Clashes erupted between Palestinians and Israeli troops in the West Bank city of Ramallah as violence continues to spike in the region. Palestinians hurled stones and troops responded with tear gas. Since mid-September, 12 Israelis have been killed in mostly stabbing attacks. 77 Palestinians have died in Israeli gunfire. In other world news, hundreds of New York police officers gathered outside the residence of Mayor Bill de Blasio. It was part of a protest for higher wages and better working conditions. Officers blew whistles at Blasio. The dispute between the NYPD and the mayor erupted after Blasio criticised officers following the death of another unarmed African-American in custody. And a bulldog called Otto has set a world skateboarding record in Lima. The dog did manage to speed through 30 pairs of legs, and that earned him official recognition in the Guinness Book of World Records. Otto now holds the title for the longest human tunnel travelled through by a dog on a skateboard. You're watching RT International. We'll be back with more news in 30 minutes.